Now to a published report that suggests a conspiracy theory between the DOJ joining a lawsuit and an angry tweet from the president's top campaign advisor. Back in April, Chief Obama campaign advisor David Axelrod tweeted that a Gallup poll showing Governor Romney ahead of the president was flawed in the way it had been conducted. Gallup executives suggested in a series of internal emails that Axelrod was, quote, trying to work the refs, and the charge was politically motivated. Fast forward a couple of months, and the DOJ jumping into a years-old lawsuit that accuses Gallup of something completely unrelated, and now some are suggesting the two are somehow connected. Is that fair? Here now, attorney Brian Claypool and GOP pollster and former executive director of the Texas Republican Party, Chris Wilson. Thank you to you both for joining us.
Hi, Shannon.
All right, Chris, I want to start with you. I mean, how often is it that people who don't like poll numbers, from somewhere as important as a presidential campaign, reach out and, publicly denigrate a poll and its methodology and the way that it was conducted?
Well, I don't think the public denigration of the poll is what's all that surprising. That does happen regularly. Anytime someone doesn't like polling numbers, they try and say there's something wrong with the methodology. The problem here is the way they went about doing it. I mean, they really contacted Gallup, asked them to change their methodology. When they didn't, then the DOJ joins this lawsuit. And I think what it shows is how quickly Obama is willing to jump to the Chicago style of politics, throw out some of our most fundamental and treasured freedoms, and go after an organization like Gallup, which, make no mistake, Gallup is one of the oldest, most respected, most trusted polling organizations in America, and they really are a part of the media. And so what the Obama campaign is trying to do here is influence the media by using the Department of Justice. And I think that's a very frightening thing for all of us.
All right, Brian, I want to flesh this out a little bit more because this comes to us from the Daily Caller, and they're the ones who say that they have emails showing that the Gallup people at least thought that there was some kind of political motivation, that at one point they say that David Axelrod had suggested that one of their pollsters go over and discuss with the White House how their methodology had worked to go and basically defend it. Now, this DOJ lawsuit, they've joined a lawsuit that started a couple of years ago from somebody who used to work at Gallup, but it turns out that person was also an organizer for the Obama campaign in Iowa. Is it drawing too much of a link to say that these two things go together? Is it just a coincidence?
Shannon, not at all. And I think the DOJ needs to hire Houdini right now as a legal consultant to work some magic to get them out of this mess. Because clearly on the surface of this, it looks like Mr. Lindley, he worked for Mr. Obama in 2008 in his campaign. Obama's then elected. He goes to Gallup, works for Gallup for a year or so, and then he mysteriously either quits or he's fired. I don't know which one. And then shortly after that, he files these allegations against the Gallup poll under seal and sues them, right? Fast forward now, almost 3 years later, the DOJ investigated it. DOJ investigated for a year and a half, didn't do anything about it, and now, 2 months before the election, the DOJ is going to jump on board with this lawsuit. Clearly, it gives the perception that the DOJ is using this lawsuit as a pretext to bully and intimidate Gallup to come up with more favorable numbers for President Obama. It's really terrible.
Chris, Robert Gibbs, by the way, he says that he doesn't know anything about any communication between the campaign and Gallup. So we have to take that word from him that he didn't know that there would be anything or any discussions going on between them, the two of them. And would it make sense if this was politically motivated, the DOJ getting involved in this lawsuit, would it make sense to do that 2 months before, or a couple of months if we count back a little bit? This lawsuit has not actually been filed yet, or the DOJ's involvement in it. But would it make sense for them now to go after Gallup when they need those poll numbers to be accurate and if they're good for the president to look good going into an election 60 days out?
Well, it does. There's a winner's mentality that's created. If Gallup shows that Obama's losing, they could be discouraging to Democrats. You could have a situation that exists like existed in 2010, where you had a lot of Democrats that didn't turn out to vote because they didn't believe that their candidates had a chance of winning. And so it makes perfect sense. I think the timing is exactly suspect in the fact that it was 2 months after that Axelrod went after Gallup, made these comments, wanted them to come over to the White House to discuss methodology. And think for a second, if you replace the word Gallup with New York Times or Washington Post and just replace poll with newspaper or news report, imagine the outcry from every journalist in America. And I think it's a shame that no one else has jumped on top of this yet, because it is such an amazing story about how quickly our fundamental freedoms, such as freedom of the press, can be threatened just because the Obama administration doesn't like the story that's coming out, which in this case is just simply poll numbers.
Well, Chris, since you've been a pollster, I want to ask you, have you had a chance to look at any of these numbers, the methodology, what we know about Gallup and its track record?
Oh, absolutely. A Gallup organization, as I said, is the oldest pollster in America. Their track record's impeccable. They are meticulous in the way that they sample likely voters. They move from a registered voter to a likely voter sample. You really cannot argue with the work that they've done over the years because they have updated it over time. They have I forget, it's a 7 or a 9-step screener process to make sure they are talking to a voter. It really, to question their numbers, I think, is absolutely ridiculous here. And they're sort of the gold standard in our industry. And the Obama administration just doesn't like the fact that their numbers are the ones showing that Romney has a lead, where a lot of the Democratic numbers that are being released actually show Obama with the lead. And I'd say if they want to question anyone, it should be the numbers coming out that show Obama ahead.
Brian, we reached out to both the White House and DOJ, have not had comment from them yet. But again, as I note, Robert Gibbs says he doesn't know about any discussion between the campaign and Gallup. Where do we leave this at this point? I mean, this was an existing lawsuit, the DOJ. It's unrelated. They got involved. Where do we leave it?
Well, first of all, this is horrible timing for President Obama to do this. Last night on his speech, he talked about every American having a fair playing field, having a fair opportunity to have success and to have a good job and to provide for their families. Here now, 2 months before an election, you have what appears to be on the surface an unfair playing field being created in favor of President Obama. And it's just a terrible PR strategy. The DOJ, Shannon, investigated this back in 2009. Year and a half went by. The Gallup poll came in and asked for a meeting. Nothing happened. Now all of a sudden, you're going to join in on a lawsuit? I think it's bogus. It's a bully tactic. They need to withdraw from this lawsuit and let the process play out.
All right, Brian and Chris, we thank you both for your time. If we do hear from the campaign, from the DOJ or the White House, we certainly want to hear their side of the story, and I'm sure that Megan will bring that to you folks out there who watch America Live every day if we get it. Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon.
A World War II vet is gaining national attention for defending his home from an intruder. We'll show you how he avoided becoming the victim. A record number of Americans are out of work, and the